And this is the gathering of priestesses. A gathering of priestesses is a loose group of women, sometimes we're loose women, who believe that we serve the divine by speaking our words, using our hands, using our intelligence, and we are here in the service of the divine, whatever she may be called. Tonight with us we have the lovely Halle Eavelyn coming to us from Miami, Florida, where she says she's in the process of a move, so we're going to have to cut her some real slack. She's moving in 3 days. Frankly, if I were moving in 3 days, I would be so insane I would never be able to come on. We also have our darling and dear Catherine Ravenwood, who is going to be with us this evening, of course, as our co-host and my co-conspirator in all things. We're putting this together and rolling it out for you. This is the second show of the year, but this is the 38th show of the series. And we're delighted that you could be here. I see Patricia's here, and Reese is here, and Marie-Claude. Thank you so much for showing up. And anybody else who shows up or watches us on YouTube, know that you are welcome. And you're also welcome to join us on a gathering of priestesses on the Facebook group. I'm going to warn you ahead of time, my voice is not real strong yet. So at some point I may ask Raven to take over and do the interviewing. I'm noticing I'm a little breathless here. And I listened to myself from last week and I said, oh my God, I sounded horrible. So I'm going to just make it up front that I'm still recovering from whooping cough, and damaged my lungs a little bit with that. I really, really, really think that you never want to get that. So get your tetanus shot and your whooping cough booster. You never know when you're going to step on a rusty nail. Anyway, so I'd like to welcome our lovely Halle Eavelyn. How are you doing, sweetheart?
I'm good. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for the packing break. I needed it.
Yeah, well, I haven't seen you since you were just bringing out your new book, Red Goddess Rising, and you were down here in San Diego. And now you're all the way across the country in Miami.
Yeah.
We'll ask you about that in just a minute. Right now we're going to start with the only prepared question that is on this show, and that is, how did you get on the priestess path?
That's a good question, considering that I used to be a self-described atheist. I got hit upside the head by spirit. That's the shorthand version. For the long version, you can read it in the book, because that's really what Red Goddess Rising is about, is my spiritual awakening and the trips that I've been leading up the Nile, or co-leading up the Nile, for almost a decade now. I was an atheist, and I was on my very first trip to Egypt, and literally it was like spirit hit me upside the head and said hello, and when that happened, it just changed everything. I have described it since as, it used to be like I was standing in a room and the lights were off, and standing in the dark and flipping the light switch on and off and on, and nothing's happening. And then afterward, it was like I was standing in a room flooded with light, and I could never turn the lights off again. That's how much of a shift it was. And that's really what put me on the priestess path.
Well, I know that you've been leading tours not only to Egypt, but also, let's see, Nepal, Bali, Greece, trying to remember a number of other places. So we'll talk about that as well. But right now we want to talk about this not new, but your spiritual counseling that you're doing. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it is a little bit new in that I'm doing it more on a career path now. Before, I was just sort of doing it ad hoc. It got started because of the women on our tours. I've been leading an Eat, Pray, Love tour to Bali for a bunch of years, like since 2006 or 2007, and that has been really powerful. There have been a lot of women who have come on the trip who were in pain and who needed a shift. And what would happen would be they're gone for a week. They've traveled halfway, literally halfway across the world, and they desperately want to get over something: the death of a loved one, divorce, career change, some big life event. And I had to learn how to facilitate that getting over the hump, that shift, quickly. And so now that I'm taking on clients personally, I'm only taking on a few clients. It's very like high end, but the work is so powerful and so deep and has shifted these people so fast. I mean, literally, like one of the clients said, "You saved me 10 years of therapy," and I believe it because it was that fast. So I deal with a bunch of different modalities. It's a little bit of NLP, some Sedona methods, some Abraham teachings, some just tapping. But then on top of all of that, I kind of layer whatever Spirit's telling me at the time. And it's been really successful beyond my hopes. So that's been really good. And I love helping people. Oh my gosh, has that been a beautiful thing. When a woman says to me, I've hated my body for my entire life, and then she can eventually, after a couple sessions, she can look in the mirror and say, I love myself. That to me is like, I just can't even explain it. It's so beautiful.
Well, I've got to say that is one thing that's totally fulfilling for me as well, and for Raven, I know it is, that she does a lot of counseling, so we know where you're coming from with that. And I understand, it's sort of new, but you're doing this primarily over the phone? Or are you doing this in person?
Yeah, almost all my client work is on the phone. If somebody, I've done FaceTime sessions, I've done Skype sessions, but there's no reason for me to do it in person. And I wasn't sure about that at first because, of course, when I was on the trips, it was always in person. But it's been perfectly fine. And, I know, like, when I check in with Spirit about something, or when I hear, like, information, like, sometimes I'll ask a question and I'll hear the answer before the other person says it. And, there doesn't seem to be, well, let me see. There doesn't seem to be any time or space. Go figure. So as a result of that, it hasn't really been necessary for me to be physically in the room with the person. And I wasn't sure about that until it happened, but it's been a really beautiful thing.
Yeah, I had someone call me yesterday who wanted she wasn't sure what she wanted. And she's saying, well, I'm in Escondido, and can you come over here, or do I have to come to Oceanside? I said, no, it doesn't matter where you are. Yeah. And she said, what do you mean? I said, well, I have clients in Southwest Australia, in South America, in Switzerland, in Norway, and in the North Slope of Alaska. To me, it doesn't matter. There's no difference.
Yeah.
Because, well, isn't it easier and better when we're in person? And I said, not necessarily. I said, sometimes you get in the way when you're in person.
For sure.
Find that as well?
Yeah. I mean, the sessions that I've done in person on trips, a lot of times the first half of the session is just getting people out of their own way.
Mm-hmm.
But it's been really powerful when it's happened that shift can take place. When it's on the phone, it seems like, like I'll talk to somebody on the phone who's a potential client, and because I don't take everybody, I'm very selective, and you have to like really be ready, because I don't want to take you on unless I know that you're going to be willing to do the work. And so I'll talk to somebody, and they'll be like, they're practically like throwing up everything that ever happened to them in their lives. I mean, the things that they tell me as a total stranger. But I often find that, the phone gives you that distance so that they can be as honest as they need to be. And then once they shift into that space, then there's this total trust, and then they can just do the work. And so it's very fast. The only thing that I have a hard time with is when I do like TFT, when I do the tapping, and I don't use tapping all the time, but if I use it in a session, okay, go 3/4 of the way up your finger on the left hand.
Yeah.
All you have to do is go like this. It's so much easier. So, I mean, that part has been a little bit difficult, but even that has translated fine, and people have been able to, to set the work using the tapping. So that's been good.
Raven, I want you to come in here because you do both phone and in-person sessions. What do you find? Do you find it's easier whenever they're on the phone or Skype, or do you find it
I
easier in
find
person?
that it doesn't make any difference to me. And I agree with Halle that sometimes it's just letting people are in the way. They're nervous. You're watching them. You know, so I think they get some people get hung up on that because I use tarot. Some people think, well, I'm not going to see the cards, and I say it doesn't matter, and it doesn't. And I've never had a problem doing phone session. And then if some cards are particularly wonderful, I can always, you know, take a picture and text them, or, you know, I'll say, well, I'll mail you a copy of this, and then you can put it up on the wall and look at it. So I
Yeah,
copy the cards and send them a copy.
yeah, so I agree with her on that, and I think anyone who's listening, you know, one of the things that I have had people question us about is, you know, they'd like to have a master class on how to be a psychic or how to do readings at a distance, and I think this is something important to remember is once you start doing it, you will notice there isn't a lot of difference between doing it in person and doing it at a distance, except for the fact you don't have the travel time. Either one of you.
You have to set the intention.
Right.
And if, as a therapist, we are not being present with that person and holding them in our attention, then it's not going to work present, or if you're not going to work in the room or 1,000 miles away. I think it's bringing in that focus and holding it that allows the client to be able to move into that space like Halle talked about. We have to open that space for them.
Yeah, I totally agree. I won't, if I'm like in the middle of a session, I won't even like break to take a sip of water. And if I didn't bring that water with me or my coffee or whatever, and it's not sitting right there, I'm not getting up out of the chair once the session starts because I don't want to break that energy. And I sit there, you know, this was something very unexpected from a distance. In person, I was totally getting it. I'm like, I'm 6 inches away from you. Yes, I'm getting all these vibes. But to be on the phone with somebody and to have them in the middle of, you know, a visioning session, a regression, you know, something that is like taking them back, and to be able to completely picture everything that they're going through, and then to feel the same things that they're going through as they're experiencing that cathartic shift. I mean, I'll be in tears in the middle of my session because of something that's going on with the client, and you know, and I feel that connected to it. I mean, I'm not doing it on purpose. It's not like, oh, I really want to connect with it. It's just that's what's happening in the work. And I couldn't imagine breaking from that. And I feel like, you know, doing it in person, I don't know, like I would feel less comfortable, like close your eyes and then I'm closing my eyes too. But on the phone, it's like I'll spend half the session with my eyes shut because that's what I need to do to be able to access them. And it's, you know, it's been perfect. I've been very, very grateful for the experience.
Well, I think that it's great, and I think it's fabulous, and I'm sure that your clients are extremely grateful for your working with them. I know that there's many people out there that feel like they're totally stuck and they can't move beyond that stuckness. So, you know, it's one of those things we run into, and sometimes it looks so easy from the outside, you know. And it's particularly difficult whenever it's your sister or your mother giving you the advice. So.
Well, what's been a little bit of an issue for me, because I'm doing some Facebook ad campaigns, and I get applications from people who say, you know, I want to work with you, and then I go through the applications and I look, and if I feel like they're ready, then we have a phone conversation before, you know, I mean, I don't want to say I screen them, but I really have to because it's about them and like what's in their highest and best good. And so we'll be in the middle of that phone conversation, and I'll realize they're not ready because they won't commit. They want to think about it or talk about it or go away and deal with it and then come back. And I've realized that I'm not doing them any favors, so I've stopped sugarcoating it. And I'm like, look, if you're not ready to commit to this right now after we've just spent an hour on the phone with me and we're ready to roll, it's not nothing to do with me. Somebody else will be ready, but you're not ready to commit to yourself. And that has been such a powerful awareness for me that, like, even before they become a client, they tell you whether they should be your client by the words that they use, or the excuses that they make, or if they miss a phone call or something. It's like, oh yeah, you said you were ready, but you're not really ready. And that's been really a powerful awareness for me as well. I feel like if we can help the most people, it's by recognizing what is in their highest and best good, what they're really ready for, even when they can't see it for themselves. But I get so many applications and people who are in agony, and I hate that. I mean, my heart goes out to everybody. I want to help everybody, and that's been, I guess that's my lesson right now that I'm learning.
Well, there are always people that are shopping. And my experience is that one of the things, if you'll say it right up front, at the end of this call, I'm going to ask you to make a commitment. If you don't feel you're ready to make a commitment, this is going to be a very short call.
Yeah, that's, may I steal that? That's a good idea. I'll stop that. Yeah, because you're right. I mean, and it's like, I want the best for people so much. I mean, I've cut my rate to I'll do anything because you need this so freaking bad. And they'll still come up with some excuse that's like some other thing because ultimately, they're not ready. Like I talked to a lady a couple weeks ago. She had 100 pounds to lose and she was pre-diabetic. And I said, where do you picture yourself in 20 years? And she said, I'll probably be dead. And I was like, you won't even be 70, geez. But that's her expectation, and I just but she wasn't ready, and I finally said that to her, and wished her the best, and so anyway.
Well, I think many people are more afraid to change and not know what they might become than to stay trapped in the pain they're already in. Well, their pain is so comfortable to them, and it's so terrifying to think that they might be different.
One of my favorite quotes in the world, and I hope I don't butcher it too badly, is Anais Nin. The day comes when the need to bloom the urge to bloom is less painful than the need to stay in the tight bud. Something like that, but that's exactly what you're talking about. I'm going to have to memorize that quote properly because I did butcher it, and it's so beautiful. But yeah, you're right. When they're ready to shift, they're really ready, and until then, their pain to grow has to be big, less than the pain that they're experiencing staying.
Yeah, and I think we've all felt that. But when people some people would rather die than change.
And some people do. My friend was at he facilitates funerals here in Miami and weddings. He's a wonderful minister. But he had to go to a funeral the other day of a man who died because he couldn't figure out a way out of the relationship that he was in. Some people would rather die than change. It's totally true.
There's the old phrase, better the devil you know than the devil you don't know.
I wasn't sure. Do I want to quote that or Anais Nin? I probably should have picked that one because I wouldn't have ruined the quote, but you're absolutely right. Yes.
But it's sad, but that's where we are a lot of the time, and whenever we're trying to deal with these issues, sometimes we just can't see beyond our own. One of my teachers says, you can't see when you're in the frame. You're right here, and you can't see it. So you got to have somebody who can see where you are and where you need to go, who will work with you. And she's one of my speaking teachers, and she works with people all the time who actually, you know, speaking is one of those things that it's almost, people are almost more afraid to speak in public than they are to die. So none of us have that problem. But
really.
but you know, whenever you're talking about getting up on a stage and speaking, there's a lot of people that literally they'd wet their pants if they had to get up on a stage and speak. And if they have to do it, you know, it throws them into trauma. But we have to get beyond ourselves. And in your case, I mean, I think that one of the issues here for you to realize is that you have to go to the highest and best use of your time. Because if you're spending a lot of time with these people who aren't ready to commit, who aren't ready to, you know, they're willing to fill out an application because, after all, almost everybody will take a test, particularly off Facebook. You know, I mean, how many, what century are you supposed to live in, and what were you in your past life? We've all done those. So, you know, look at the highest and best use of your time, you know. You're the leader of Spirit Quest tours. You're, you know, coordinating people traveling all around the world. And if you want to do the spiritual work, it really has to be to your standards.
Yeah, you know what? I really looked hard at what I wanted to do when I chose to develop this as a business practice. And, you know, that was one of the reasons, actually, that I chose to do it on the phone, because I wanted to see if it would work, because then I can do it from anywhere, and it doesn't really matter. And I want that freedom. I mean, I never want to have to go into an office, ever, to do my work. And that has worked out really well. But, yeah, I mean, that's why I take on so few clients, and that's why it's a high-end program, because I really want it to be the thing that serves people beautifully. If I want to serve everybody, I'm going to write a book. And in fact, I'm got a new book series that I'm working on.
It sounds great. Tell us about your new book.
It's called Conversations in My Head, a collection of women's self-talk. But I've actually expanded it recently into the idea of a series of books, not just a single book. So I'm going to theme each book, and the first Conversations in My Head is going to be about women who overcame a struggle with weight loss. And the next one is going to be about women who overcame an issue in a relationship. And the next one is going to be about women who overcame a death of a loved one. And the idea is that, because, you know, I hear from women all over the world, but also for a couple of years I was in a really fascinating food program where I got to hear a lot of stories of women's struggles around food as I was getting over my own struggles around food, which had been a 25-year battle of 40 pounds. I mean, I struggled for almost as many years. It was like a pound a year, you know, ridiculous. Anyway, but that was what was so amazing for me, was to listen to all of these other stories and to realize that the triumphs over that. But for the women who haven't triumphed, the self-talk is like, it just goes like crazy all the time. And it becomes obsessive. In fact, one woman that I worked with recently as a client, she was like, I don't know what to do now that I'm not talking negatively to myself all day long. She's like, I have all this time and space in my head. And I was like, well, you could start a new business, or you could have a hobby, or you could, I said, you know, did you realize this was your old hobby, was, you know, saying bad things to yourself all day long? And that's been a real eye-opener for me, is how bad the self-talk gets for people around whatever, you know, that issue is. So I think that there is some real power in the idea of getting these words out, because they'll be words of comfort for other women who haven't gotten to that place yet. So I'm excited about it. I'm really excited about it.
Well, I think that's great. You know, there's a study that was done in which they I don't know how they did this, but they did it somehow, where they were able to track people's thoughts. And what they found is that people have 97 negative thoughts about themselves, to every 3 positive thoughts.
Doesn't surprise me. You know, I would love to know where that statistic came from. If you do find it, and if you could send it to me, I would love that. Because what I was doing when I was researching was I was looking for that quote of you have 50,000 negative thoughts a day or 50,000 thoughts a day. And I actually heard Oprah Winfrey speak when she was here in Miami a few months ago, and she quoted that too. But I couldn't find the statistic. Every place I looked quoted this source. Then I would go back. It was like, I don't know, Washington Institute of Health or something like that. And when you went back to the source, it was like they were quoting somebody else, but they didn't say who. And then there was, so it was like this circuitous thing where I never did get an answer. So do you have 1,000 thoughts a day? Do you have 10,000 thoughts a day? Do you have 50,000 thoughts a day? Nobody seems to know. So it would be great to have a statistic where people got wired up, and no matter how many thoughts they had almost 100% more of negative thoughts.
Yeah. I'll have to look that up. I know it was who it was quoted it to me, so he'll probably know. I'll check with him. But the other part of that is that if someone says something negative to you, in other words, you're fat or you're ugly or you're whatever, that the valence, the strength of that is 10 to 20 times as strong as someone telling you you're pretty. In other words, in your mind, whenever someone else says to you a negative thing, you give it so much more power, so much more strength, that it's almost impossible to overcome it. And it can be... it can be a kind negative. It can be a, you'd be really beautiful if you lost a little weight. Oh. All you hear is you're fat.
Yeah, that's really bad. People used to say that to me occasionally, and you just want to die. My favorite story about that, it's actually one of my least favorite stories, but it is so illustrative. My father and mother and I were once sitting in a hot tub, and my father turned to my mother and he said, "We did not give her a good neck." And I have a tendency, I put on weight here really fast, and at the time, at 180 pounds, my neck looked like that. So, I agreed with him in principle, but, oh God, the agony, the shame, the, wanting to be swirled down the drain with the water of the hot tub. I mean, it was just rough, and and my dear friend, when I told him, he's just a lovely person, and when I told him, he said, "You have a perfect neck." And I was like, what a lovely thing to say. Wow, are you being a true friend to me at this moment to say something? Because, yeah, that one negative thing and it's not just, the reason it has the 10 to 20 times more power is because you're giving it that much more.
Oh, yeah, I'm not saying they're giving it that much, but the problem is that, people say to somebody, you're fat, or some variants of that. Do you think they don't have mirrors? They know they're overweight. They know they have a weight problem. They don't need you to tell them. And I think that that's one of the things that, I think that there's an unkindness that goes around, particularly among young ones, who, there's no reason for that. If they could do something about it, they would. And
energetically, a lot of it, though, is so internal. I mean, this is why, when I have an ad that I run on Facebook where it's a picture of me really heavy, and it says, "Click here to see what I look like now." And when you click on the ad, you see me now as a size 6, and it's a great picture. And people are like, they can't fill out the form fast enough. And that's been very interesting for me, because then they get on the phone with me and they're like, "Well, I'm on, I don't want to do this diet program." And I'm like, wait, I'm not a diet coach. That's not what's broken.
Right.
Is in the head, and that's the problem. It's like here's a guy out there who's going to love every single heavy woman or not notice or whatever.
Right.
The person inside, if you don't want somebody to touch you because you hate your body, It doesn't matter what weight you are, and there's plenty of women who are underweight and think exactly like that. And that's where the problem is. It's just like in people's heads about their value and their self-worth, and what constitutes worthiness has shifted so much in our society, and it's so externalized these days. And it's about like turning that back within, about the value that somebody's actually bringing to the world, as opposed to the value of their face, which is going to go away eventually.
Well, hopefully not. I mean, we're going to make our way through life with a face one way or the other. I have a friend down there in Florida who a number of years ago, about 5 years ago, did a online program that was the ultimate weight loss guide. And whenever you signed up for his ultimate weight loss guide, which was free, you got a bonus of the one thing you have to do in order to lose weight. Well, the ultimate weight loss guide was 2 pages. Move more, eat less. And the bonus was drink water.
And he was giving this valuable advice away for free.
Oh, yes.
I say to probably the thing I say to my clients most these days is simple, not easy. And that's the thing. It's like move more, eat less, drink water. Could that be any simpler? And yet, yeah.
So anyway, I would imagine, when we've talked about weight loss, I imagine you deal with a number of other issues in your spiritual counseling. What do you do when somebody comes to you and says, oh, I have been cursed, I have entities? There's this whole curse and entity thing that's floating around right now. Have you experienced that?
Well, I, for better or for worse, have worked with several people to clear entities.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll be very upfront with you. My business partner in Spirit Quest Tours, Greg Roach, who was my personal partner for many years,
mm-hmm.
He and I used to do what we called spirit sessions, and he would channel a group that's known as the White Lodge or the White Brotherhood.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes people would come to us with entities, and he would have to clear them. And when the White Brotherhood's sitting there telling you, yep, that person's got an entity, you believe them. We cleared an entity once from a guest in Egypt. He came down the next day, and he goes, I was doing the butterfly stroke. I was doing the butterfly stroke. And we're like, yeah. And he goes, no, you don't understand. Until yesterday, I haven't been able to lift this arm up above my shoulder for 10 years.
Mm.
And that's where the entity was apparently residing. I've seen some weird, wacky stuff. That was not the most bizarre story, just the one that popped into my head first. So I don't want to discount the idea of them, because I know that they exist, and I know that there's a lot of energetic forms that are bad. But my experience, all I'll say is, you can get rid of it yourself if you know how, and even when Spirit clears it with you, it's with you. They can't clear it without you.
Right.
Given permission for the entity to come in, you've got to give permission for the entity to go away. You can separate from that, and honestly, there's a lot of feelings that people have. I'll just give you an example. If you have a belief that you're not deserving of love, when you work with me to clear that belief, it's going to show up as a creature that's been living in you. And when you clear it, I encourage you to say goodbye to it, to thank it for its years of service and protecting you, and to understand that there may be pain, discomfort, or sadness because you're releasing this longtime companion. Now, that's not an actual entity, and yet it is, So it's like, I think there's different levels of things. And
Raven, you've been quiet for far too long.
What?
I said you've been quiet for far too long.
No, I'm just listening to all of it.
I know, but so what do you have to say?
About it?
Yeah, about anything.
Oh, well, I've never dealt with what I would call an actual entity, but I have pulled tangible, physical bodies of energy out of people before that might look like some kind of an entity, but it's always felt like more like to me a layer of their own, these people's own energy, what they put together. I've had I've had people call me and ask me if I can, quote, cast out the demons, and I say, probably not. It depends on what you want to do, how you want to work with me, but I don't really know about dealing with that. So I found that whenever I have worked with people and they've had phenomenal releases, I think it's more like you were saying, Halle, that it's like an entity because it's been something they've formed within them and carried around with them for a while, for so long. And it becomes like another layer of your own being within you. I don't know. Maybe I can't lift my shoulder up all the way. Maybe that's my problem.
We'll do an entity release later.
Okay.
So let's talk a little bit about segue here and talk a little bit about your tours. I know that you've got one coming up to a really interesting place where I would love to go. That's South Africa. And that's going to be when?
Yeah, the South Africa trip, I have to get it up on the website. After I move, I'm going to do that. The South Africa trip will be in September, and I did a trip last September to South Africa, and also to Zimbabwe. We went to Victoria Falls, and the whole experience was phenomenal. We work with a really amazing game preserve called Tula Tula, and they have they rescued a herd of rogue elephants. Think about 15 years ago, maybe closer to 20 now, that were all destined to be shot because they were all like problem elephants. And elephants, they're big, they're very large creatures, and so when they get it into their heads that they're going to trample a village, it's going to be trampled. So that's why these elephants were acting out. And instead, they gave this entire herd to this gentleman who owned Tula Tula, Lawrence Anthony. Mm-hmm. And Lawrence had almost single-handedly rescued during his career, he almost single-handedly rescued all of the rest of the animals in the Baghdad Zoo after the first Gulf War, when they were on the verge of starvation. And all the ones that hadn't been eaten or carried off, which basically was anything with claws, he came in and got all those animals rescued and given to zoos in other parts of the world. He was very much an animal conservationist, and he started off with this elephant rescue. The herd is now so big that they've started exercising birth control measures because they don't want to grow the herd past the perimeter of Tula Tula. But they've just also started a rhino rescue, and they have their first 2 rhinos. And rhinos are being poached at the rate of 1,000 a year, which doesn't sound like a lot until you find out there are only 20,000 of these rhinos in the world. And 90% of them or something are in South Africa. So it's devastating. Do the math, 20 years, no more rhinos. So they have a 24-hour armed guard that walk with them.
Wow.
Over the grounds. And the grounds are vast. You take a 2-hour jeep ride every morning and another 2-hour one every afternoon to go see game. And when you see giraffe in its natural habitat, like, we're humans. We're like, we rule, right? We're bigger we're smarter, we're stronger. No. When you get out into the veldt and you see a giraffe that looks small compared to the land that you're in, mm-hmm. It gives you perspective about where you fit on the scale of human existence. And then you go out to like Victoria Falls, which is 3/4 of a mile long, wide, not tall, wide. Like you cannot stand at any point in the falls, unless, not even in the middle, but no point in the falls can you stand and see the rest of the falls. Your eyes don't go that far. It's phenomenal, and the experience that I had there was just beautiful. So I cannot wait to go back. That will be in September. We also have a Course of Miracles. I'm not co-leading this trip, but it's going to be wonderful, and that's on the website right now. A Course of Miracles trip to Egypt coming up in April. The Course of Miracles, a Course in Miracles in the Land of Miracles. Ta-da.
Oh, wow.
And that's actually being co-led by Greg Roach and Dr. Sarah Larson, who's been teaching A Course in Miracles for a long time. And that's going to be an amazing trip. In Egypt, we have a private cruise ship. Spirit Quest Tours is partners in a private cruise ship. So the cruise ship is 16 people, 8 cabins, private chef, 3 decks. It's called the Afandina. There's pictures.
Yeah, we're familiar with it.
Yes, yes. Oh, yes, of course you are. Absolutely. So yes, so we get to be on the Afandina and love it. And yeah, you've been on a few times, if I recall.
Yes, we wrote a book on it. Raven and I were part of the book, Invoking the Scribes of Ancient Egypt. The whole purpose of that book was to get the boat for the longest period of time.
because Gloria is a boat junkie.
Well, I've been on a bunch of the big cruise ships on the Nile, and it's wonderful. But the Afandina is just it's so bad.
Yeah.
It's a completely different tour. Anybody who's ever been on the big tour ships, and when you go on the smaller boats, it's a completely different tour. It's just not the same. It's much more like cruising down the Nile with, the people at the late 1800s.
I know. That's how I describe it too. You're so right. Now, how many times have you been back to Egypt since the revolution?
I haven't. My last trip was before it, and since then I've been dealing with my husband. I just was talking today about whether I was going to go back this next year or not, and I don't know. It's like, well, if he dies, I'll go. Which sounds horrible, but
well,
I just don't know right now.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard because even whenever I don't go over there for a day, I went over there yesterday, and he says, "I'm looking for a new wife." And I said, why do you want a new wife? He says, "Well, you weren't here at lunch. I need another wife. I told these women if they divorced their husband, I'd marry them."
Very nice.
Now, of course, he wants to marry the pretty blonde physical rehab woman, but he's not trying to marry the women who are in there. He's trying to marry the women who work there. So, he's 82, but he's still a man.
Yes, I completely understand. Sorry about that.
But it's you did some tours. You did the Eat, Pray, Love to Bali. And you're not doing that one anymore, right?
No, that's not exactly true. We don't have one on the books right now, but certainly never say never. We actually sometimes we do white label, I guess is the right word, but we'll do white label tours for other tour leaders. And so I just got a call about a big tour that we'll be doing in Bali at the beginning of next year, so about a year from now. And that's about how long it takes. You got to have some lead time to put the really big ones and the really good ones together. But that's a key tour because it was so successful the last time, and it's phenomenal. Bali is one of my favorite places on the planet. But Greg is actually doing a tour to Morocco in April, which is going to be off the hook. We got hooked up. Now, Spirit Quest, our fame, bless you, right? Our claim to fame is doing things that you don't normally get other places.
Mm-hmm.
So in Morocco, we have hooked up with this Sufi master, and we're going to be there in Fez during the Sufi music festival.
Oh, wow.
And we're doing a private, what's called an Isawa, which is like a Sufi trance dance / rave dinner ceremony thingy with this guy who is like one of the grand masters of Sufism on the planet. And it's a private Isawa just for the group. So, and that's on top of Marrakesh and like 8 other places in between, including Casablanca, where, okay, there is a real, actual Rick's Cafe Americain in Casablanca.
Yes, yes.
Shall I spoil it by telling you that it came out after the movie?
Oh, I know it did, but it's still there.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's kind of one of those watering holes that Americans all have to go to.
Right.
But the other thing in Morocco is absolutely fabulous clothing.
Yeah. Yeah. Greg came back from his last trip from Morocco and with all new man dresses. And normally he has to wait until he's in Egypt. But yeah, the clothes in Morocco are gorgeous. Plus argan oil, and one of the only places in the world where you can buy neroli, which is the orange blossom oil. And normally I'll pay $40 for this much neroli, and I'll have to go to like Neal's Yard in London to get it. But they sell it in Morocco. You can buy tubes of it, like really big ones, for not a lot of money. That's a beautiful thing too. So.
Yeah, the Moroccan cuisine, going back to the talk about food, Moroccan cuisine is incredible. You know, it's different from the Eastern Mediterranean. Some of it's similar, but a lot of it's not.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's similar in some areas anyway. It's similar to Egyptian cuisine, but of course everything has its own developed thing. What's interesting for me is, of course, I get all these, especially women, but men and women, they'll call up and they'll be like, I'm vegan, I'm vegetarian, can I eat in this country? And I'm like, oh, God, yes. Not even a question. It's wonderful food. And plus, most of it tends to be macrobiotic because they have less refrigeration, no trucking, no transport. It's like, you know, if that stuff was picked more than a mile away from the restaurant you're eating it, it's an unusual circumstance. And if it was picked longer than a day ago, it's going to have spoiled already. So you can eat very fresh, very immediately. And I feel like, well, I actually attribute some of that to my own spiritual awakening, that like you kind of get all the chemical stuff that is normally in your purview out of the way when you're in countries like that. And then, of course, there's getting out to places like the desert where there is no anything, telephones, electricity, whatever, it's all gone. And there's no interference, and I feel like that actually can really shift spiritually as well.
Yeah, I was just talking about that today in reference to sleep. Somebody is having trouble with sleep, and I said, well, the first thing you have to do is take everything electronic out of your bedroom.
Yeah,
well, that's going to be the hardest thing you do because you're addicted to those things. Even my phone, yes, even your phone.
Especially your phone. Now, you guys have been on the Alfandina. Have you experienced this? I would have every trip. Somebody would come up to me and say, I'm an insomniac at home. I just had the best night's sleep of my life in the Alfandina.
Mm-hmm.
That seems to happen a lot.
Well, you're on the water, so that helps. You're in beautiful beds, that helps. You're totally and completely taken care of. It's kind of like being in the lap of luxury and in your mother's arms at the same time. You know, one of the things that we don't really talk about is the fact that, yes, there's 18 passengers on the Alfandina. There's also about 14 crew taking care of you.
Yep.
So, you know.
And the Alfandina is gluten-free.
Yeah.
U.S. They will make a gluten-free meal for you.
They will make a gluten-free vegan meal for you. And they don't even act like it's a big deal.
Yep, everything to order, yep.
So, that's one of the big things about traveling is people worry about food. I mean, it's pretty important. They worry about everything, and I imagine you have probably in your years of counseling people before the tours have ever heard every possible worry there is.
I have, and I've learned to say a couple things. I have learned to say, first of all, I've learned to say, just pre-frame everything and just say, don't worry, everything will be taken care of, but nothing is going to be in your control, and that's okay. That's why you're coming on this trip. And people are like, but then once they get used to it, then they're okay with it. And I've also learned that when people react badly, when their X, Y, or Z is not working the way that they want, and they freak out, I've learned to look, not take it personally in any way, and to understand that what they're really saying is, I can't control this thing, and I'm so far away from home, and I feel so lost that this is the one thing that I'm focusing on. And then I can just go, oh, okay, and say whatever I need to say to diffuse the situation, and then they're okay. And a lot of times that manifests in asking a megillion questions before they leave for the trip. That's been pretty funny too. So.
Yeah, well, sometimes when you're going to go, you can tell the people that are going to be a problem.
We don't let them come.
Yeah. It's like you're going to put a gold star on their heads. Like, I know you're going to be a problem. There's always the one that, shouldn't be on the trip in the first place. So, but yeah, I know. But still, you've done. So you did Nepal and Tibet. You did India.
No, not any of those places. No. We've mostly actually I've gone to Egypt and Bali when I've led tours, but I did start. I've done other places like once. Like I did this beautiful, amazing food tour in Madrid and Barcelona that was just off the hook, and specifically about food. And the idea of our trips is, where is the spirituality of this culture? And although the religion of Spain is Catholic, I believe that the spirituality of Spain is in its food. And people get, pardon me, religious about it when it comes time to cook that particular cuisine. So we went and took a private class where we learned paella, and then we went to Barcelona and took a different paella class, because the paellas are so different when you're, 4 hours inland. You have different things in your paella because you can't get the seafood, from like a minute away. So again, the macrobiotic thing and the local thing, yeah. So anyway, and I am actually thinking about doing some food tours to Cuba as well. As I just got back from Cuba, I was there over Thanksgiving, and it was a beautiful experience. And if anybody's interested, I've just written a series of articles. I think the 4th part is coming out this week. I blog for Huffington Post, and there's a 5-part series on my experiences in Cuba, because I didn't have a tourist experience. I was taken into the homes of locals, and I got to see things that most tourists don't. And I got to see what's going on with the Cuban people. And then I came back, and like 10 days later, Obama said, hey, we're opening up Cuba, which he's been saying for like 4 or 5 years already. So I was very grateful that it happened. And I don't think they're going to be getting Starbucks anytime soon. But
want to bet?
Well, Trinidad, which is 3 hours north of Havana.
Yeah.
Trinidad has just celebrated its 500th anniversary. And in 5 years, Havana will be celebrating its 500th anniversary. And the Castros have finally allowed in Spain and France to help with refurbishment. So I was seeing construction projects going on everywhere, but my understanding is that there's not going to be Americans coming in that way any time, and there's like no plans for that. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
We'll see, but I would be, since I've seen Kentucky Fried Chicken across the street from the Sphinx, I figure it's all fair game to American business.
Love their Kentucky Fried. I am going to ask you to talk amongst yourselves for 30 seconds while I go get my power supply, or the interview will be cut short.
All right, why don't you go ahead and do that, and we'll talk with Raven for a minute.
Okay.
Miss Raven, so what do you think about all this traveling and eating and?
Well, you know, I have loved the trips I've been on, and when I go, I'm very happy with it. But as you know, I'm really a homebody, and it's hard to pry me out. And you know, I'm still a working girl, so I'm still just trying to keep it all together. But I love going traveling and experiencing something new. I love trying the new food. I love finding out how I feel when I'm in another country. I love that ability to no longer be in my home because I am such a homebody, and to realize that I have not been thinking about it for the whole time I've been gone, and that is very transformational for me. So once, you know, it's a beautiful thing to travel, and I love to eat. Bring it on! I love it. Yeah. So I think it's a great thing to be able to experience all that. I think Morocco sounds fabulous.
Now, Morocco, the men's clothing, not the women's clothing, but the men's clothing is so incredible. And I've so wanted to go over there and shop in the souk. So Greg had a real privilege with that. And you're not going to be. Are you going to be on the Morocco trip or not?
No, I'm not going to Morocco, but I will say for anybody who's interested that there are some amazing videos. If you go to the Spirit Quest Tours YouTube channel, which I believe is Spirit Quest TV. You have to. That's our link. Is Spirit Quest TV is the YouTube channel. But also, if you go to the spiritquesttours.com website, you can just click on the link for Morocco, and I think the links are up there as well. And man, oh man, there's one video. Greg did a webinar with these stunning photos, and so he talks for an hour about his experiences in the Sufi rave, and then he shows all these amazing pictures. And then there's another video that's like 8 minutes long that's in the rave, and everybody's just spinning, and they're all wearing those, especially the men. They're all wearing these beautiful clothes, and it's pretty special. We're excited to get to go and do that trip. Yeah.
Well, your South Africa trip sounds really fabulous too. If somebody's interested in more information on those, they should go to spiritquest.com. Is that correct?
Tours with an S.
Spiritquesttours.com.
Yeah, and all they really have to do is they can sign up for the main mailing list. They can sign up for a mailing list that they're interested in one of the trips. They can email me, Halle, Halle, at spiritquesttours.com. Any of that is perfectly fine.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being on with us tonight, and thank you about telling us about your new spiritual or kind of a continuation spiritual counseling thing. Now you're moving, you're down in the Miami area, and you're moving tomorrow. And where did you say you're moving to? Belvedere?
No, I'm moving to Miramar, which is about, it's a suburb of Miami still. So.
Okay. Well, I'm going to wish you lovely move, ease and grace in the move. So my personal attitude is that what I want to do is call the movers, have them come pack it, pick it up, and take it and unpack it at the other end. So, you know, I was born to be a princess.
Well, we're doing our best to be like that, but it worked out that we just didn't have that much stuff to pack. So we're packing it ourselves, probably unpacking it ourselves, but the movers are showing up for a full day, and that will be, I don't have to lift a box, so that's good.
Oh, no.
I think that's fabulous. I think one of the things we learn as we get older is how to do things with ease and grace, and sometimes it requires hiring other people.
Yes, absolutely.
So I wish you well on that, and I wish you well on the South Africa tour, and we look forward to seeing your new books. And one of the things I was thinking about, and I didn't say to you, one of my teachers is Ken Blanchard, who did the 1 Minute Manager, and he did quite a bit of study on what people actually read, and he says in the majority they read the first chapter and part of the second chapter, so that's why his books are all 1 chapter long.
Okay, well, that's a good thing for me to adopt. It's going to be conversation in my head. Each book will be one person's conversation.
Just thought I would put that out there before you start creating 200 pages on each one of these subjects. Sometimes less is more.
That's hilarious. Thank you very much for the suggestion. I so appreciate it.
Okay, well, thank you for being with us. And Raven, thank you so much for being with us again this evening. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate your support and your being there. And if they want to reach you for a tarot reading, it's at kravenwood@yahoo.com. Is that correct?
Yes, or catherineravenwood.com.
All right, so that's your website. And hopefully we're going to have a lovely date. Now, let's see. Next week we have Ava Park from the Orange County Goddess Temple. Looking forward to that. And the week after that we have Ingrid Ronlov of the Zara Foundation. She's going to tell us about some really interesting things that she's doing in Egypt. As I said, sometimes it's the All Egypt All the Time channel here. Can't help it. But we do love everyone, and we love all the different deities and the different manifestations. So, I do need to say that the new book from Goddess Inc. is out. Raven, did you have that by any chance?
I don't. I was looking at it at Ann's the other day, but I didn't bring home a copy.
Yeah, it's a book on the goddess Kuan Yin. And if you go to goddess-inc.com, it's available now. It's really gorgeous.
And that's goddess-ink.
Yes, I-N-K.
I-N-K. And it's called She Comes, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Comes.
I have no brain. I still haven't got a brain returned yet from being sick. So anyway, this has been a gathering of priestesses, and we thank you for being with us this evening. We hope you'll be with us again. We have a show every Tuesday evening, and it is available on YouTube. Look for the playlist of A Gathering of Priestesses. And if you want to see the older shows, you can also look at Stepping Into Ourselves, which is another book by Goddess Inc. We highly recommend them. They are one of our favorite people and one of our sponsors. So thank you so much for being here today, and I'm going to let you go with a blessings on your journey.